Hi everyone and welcome back to Tachyon Tuesday. My name is Jason Kyo. I'm the Partner Chief Technologist for 1E, and today's session is looking at the sentiment module which came out in Tachyon 5.1. So as you can see, sentiment is added as one of the new categories in experience, and in the previous versions we had stability, responsiveness and performance, and we were looking at how they balance with one another, and there's Tachyon Tuesday blogs on each of those. But now we have sentiment added to this as well, and really what we're looking at as technologists is this juxtaposition between where end users say they are in terms of their sentiment and where the statistics from the device says the devices are in terms of stability, responsiveness and performance. So it's interesting to look at how these things change and what the difference is between them. Sentiment is really all managed by surveys. So essentially what we're doing is we're asking questions of the end user, and as I covered in the blog, we go to great lengths to ensure that we don't annoy users with those questions. If I just alt tab over to an endpoint device here, a VM that I have, we can see that the users can provide feedback at any time, or we can see how those surveys look to the end user. They can choose their answer and submit the thing. They can put in extra text if they want to in there. So we set up those surveys here, and essentially we've got two types of survey. We've ones that contribute to the metrics with the little M indicator here for stability issues or working from home, and ones that don't. So if we look at, for example, stability issues here, we can see what the responses are like, and they're very balanced in this response. We can see the users and what device they're using and what response they've given when they gave it. We can see the question and the layout and when it was created and how often it's going to run and so on. So all of this is obviously within our control to set up as we set up the surveys. And essentially metric-based surveys, if I do a new survey here, are restricted in that they're going to be counting towards the score of the sentiment. So they have to be translatable into a percentage. So we have 20 points, 40 points, 60, 80, 100 and so on. And we allow you to define what the name is. So this is going to be a question about, for example, a new Office 365 update, for example, right? So the question that would show to the user might be something like, how is your experience working with Office 365 over the past week? We've updated Office and you now have the latest version. How do you find working with it? Please feel free to tell us any problems you might have or provide feedback in the free text box. So we can put in a link if we want to about to whatever, and that will come up in the actual pop-up and give it to them. We can choose whether we want to give them 3 or 5 or whatever numeric ratings or visual ratings, and what icons we want to put inside those particular families. This will be sentiment with smiley faces. We can allow free text entry. We're going to schedule this to happen every we want to ask it every 3 days on average. So we can set up our different settings for a particular survey, and then there are settings per endpoint as to that control how often these surveys will pop up. So each survey is a single question. You can have multiple questions during a day if you want, but how often they show to a given user will be controlled by those settings on the endpoint. So those settings include things like if the user's moving their mouse and keyboard, touching their keyboard and typing, it won't pop up, and you can define how many seconds of a delay between when they stop moving mouse and typing on keyboard and the thing is popping up. You can likewise specify that if the user's been away from the mouse and keyboard for too long, that it won't pop up. So there's all sorts of things. The default settings really are fine, but there's a lot of control in there for you to tweak those if you want to as well. So we can save that particular survey, and then essentially we can assign which devices it's going to go to, so it's automatically assigned to all devices. I could change that with assigning a management group. I can enable or disable it and so on. We also have the ability to do very customized things, so we can see we've got one here. Yes, I've got a problem with my mouse, keyboard, monitor, headset, or whatever, and different people have said no problems, or yes, I've got a problem, and you can dip in and see that kind of thing. So these are non-metric related sentiment surveys. So these are asking questions that I can customize how it looks and feels. So if I go back here and just, let's have a look at that one and how it's set up. So we'll just clone that survey, and we've got peripherals too. And we can see here, yes, I've got to put my mouse, keyboard, etc. We can add in additional questions, and we can choose a color we want for the box, and we can choose the icon that we want to give it, and so forth, right? So these can be as flexible as you need them to be, basically. Put in any text you want, and they will pop up to the end user again based on that, those criteria that are set. And really, there's no end to the value that this can provide. So, for example, assessing security awareness, or gauging end user sentiment for working from home, something that's really not technical, but is about how happy are they working from home, how satisfied are they with the ability to work effectively. The topics are limited only by your imagination, and it's really interesting to see some of the things that users are putting this to, our customers. So some of them are using them to gauge essentially happiness of end users. It's a HR, more of a HR function than an IT function. Others are obviously using it for things like this, specifically, have you got problems with peripherals? Because if you do, the user might just decide to live with it. But I had a problem with my mouse and keyboard, and I got a new one this week, and it's just so much better. The receiver on my docking station wasn't working very well with the mouse and keyboard that I had, so it meant that I was frustrated. I couldn't type certain things, and moving my mouse wouldn't move correctly, and so on. And that doesn't lead to a good working from home experience. And for the sake of basically $40 or $50 worth of keyboard and mouse, my productivity has stepped up. That's something that's well worth trying to find out. I was just living with it though, and I lived with it for a long time before I actually, went and got a new one. So a lot of users might live with it for a very long time, and you can very simply improve their productivity by asking them a basic question and popping something up to them. So let's wait and see if one of those pops up for us. So I can say, it's average. I had a large screen in work, and now I'm working with a laptop only. Makes things harder, right? So I can submit that. If I dismiss it, it will go away and will never ask again. If I say later, it'll go away and come back to me based on the settings that are set per endpoint. So by default, it would take 24 hours, but you can change that down to a minute if you want to. It's all configurable. So I'm going to submit that, and once you submit your opinion, essentially that comes back into the policies. Now, the other thing you can look at that is by user. So if we look at that, here we can see, across all the users, we want to again look at how are they doing in terms of how quickly they respond to questions. What is their actual sentiment value? We've got some pain points, and how does that compare to things? So if we drill into this user here, Adrian Todd, we can see he's got 2 machines. One of them is online right now. He's answered 3 questions on this machine. He says that since his Office 365 update, it's been slow. He's complaining about his monitor as well, and says his network isn't great. So he's not a very happy user. And we can see his actual sentiment here. His device seems to be performing okay. It's not the fastest. It's got a medium ranking in terms of performance. Responsiveness isn't too bad though. He responds quite slowly when he's asked questions, and when he does, he's very seldom happy. But it's good to be able to see this kind of thing and get this kind of feedback from users and understand what's going on, right? So he's answered a lot of different surveys, put in some pain points. Let's have a look at those. And these are the pain points he has across all the different devices that he's been using. Maybe one is in the office, one is at home, whatever it might be. So we can gauge what is going on with an individual users and with users overall, and look at overall sentiment using these things. Indeed, if I switch back here to our sentiment, we can look at different trends. Very little data in here, but we can see trends over time as to whether things are getting better and worse as we feed them in, and we can then compare that by device model or by whatever it might be. But as you have this data coming in from real users, you can see whether things are better or worse from the feeling of the user in responding to the question, whether they're working from home or in the office, or whether they have one type of device or another type of device. And this kind of stuff is very, very important. And if the sentiment generally of users using one type of device is significantly worse than others, then you might want to take some steps to remediate that. Or if the device performance doesn't look very, very good, or its responsiveness, but the user sentiment is overall good, then maybe you don't need to change devices that you otherwise might have changed. So there's all sorts of different ways to use this data, and I think it's a really, really interesting part of experience. I was talking to some of my colleagues just the other day, and they were saying that every day that their customers are coming up with new and different and interesting, non-obvious ways of using this to better understand the user's requirements. And this is where that's what IT needs to do overall, is deliver value to the business by making sure the end users are happy with the devices that they have, and that they're able to do their work and stay productive regardless of where they are when they're working from anywhere. Feel free to reach out to 1E to find out more. Thanks for your time.